Is The Undoing on HBO worth our time? I have questions. This is just my first impression of the first episode. I thought it was, if you like psychological thrillers, I'm just going to say right off top, it's ticking the boxes. It's ticking the boxes, but I'm going to get to the end of this video before I say ask a question. And I'm going to ask a question based on some spoilers, so I'm not going to cover that right now. But the show is called The Undoing. You already know that if you clicked on it. The Undoing on HBO, starring Nicole Kidman. And the description of the show is, a therapist's life unravels after she learns that her husband might be responsible for a widespread disaster. Now, that's a tease. That is a tease to me, because after you see the first episode, you're like, how is that a widespread disaster? Is it going to cause a ripple effect? Because there's a spoiler of a thing that happens, of course. There's a thing that happens at the end of this episode that's interesting. But anyway, I'm not going to get to that. Let's get into the basic premise of the show. So Grace is the therapist, played by Nicole Kidman. Nicole Kidman is stunning in the show. She's serving looks. She's serving vintage Nicole Kidman with the big, beautiful, bouncing red curls. Oh my God, she looks so good. Anyway, stop talking about how she looks. Her character is a therapist, and she seems sweet, but she's sweet yet honest. She's kind, but to the point. Okay, when you see her in her sessions with her clients, you get a little taste of this. She's just going to be not brutally honest, but totally honest and real and direct. And I think that that's really interesting, as when you compare it to her husband. Now, her husband is played by Hugh Jackman. Did I just get no? Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant. Oh my gosh. This is driving me crazy. I'm not starting over. Whatever happens in this video happens. I said that the other day too. I'm not starting over. Anyway. So Hugh Grant plays her husband, Jonathan. From the very first scene they show him in, he's complaining, he's selfish, he seems like an a-hole basically. His son wants a dog, and you can just tell he's lying when he's like, I can't, no dogs, my throat closes up, it's so horrible. But he's like, I've been doing research on hypoallergenic dogs. But he told him he could get other pets though. So I don't know, maybe he is telling the truth, but with his character, you can't really tell. He's so dramatic and he's so self-centered. You kind of suspect him of being a liar because he's so self-centered. And then Lily Rabe is in the show. Now, Lily Rabe, you probably know, she was the hot young nun on American Horror Story. She was also one of the witches in the witch season on American Horror Story. What else was she on American Horror Story? I can't remember. She's also in a show that wasn't really popular, but I did watch, called The Whispers. I think it's called The Whispers. It was her and Milo Ventimiglia. I don't know how to say his name, but her and Milo, and they were playing this couple. It was a really interesting show. It was short-lived. It got canceled. But her character here reminds me of her role in Golden Exits. Golden Exits was you probably haven't seen it. It's a little indie movie. It was on Hulu. If you have Hulu, look up Golden Exits. I thought it was pretty good. I felt like it was worth watching. But her character in this show reminds me of her character in Golden Exits, and that Golden Exits was also set in New York, and it was a character-driven drama about people who were successful people who kind of seemed privileged, but they it was that typical thing of do you know who you're married to? Are you satisfied in your life? La 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 la. On and on and on. And she reminds me of that character in here because I feel like she's hitting a lot of the same notes as she did in that movie. But anyway, so she's in this movie and she's kind of the sassy one, and she's telling the truth, I'm gonna keep it real. I'm not gonna be as mean as this other character. This character, Sally Mayberry, she's the typical privileged uppity woman. But Lily Rabe's character is halfway between Grace and the Sally character. She's a little bit more blunt, but not as uppity and privileged as the Sally character. Sally, this woman, first of all, when the spoiler thing, she refers to this other woman as a scholarship mom. She's just she can't just be another mom at the school. She has to be pointed out as the scholarship mom. I really can't. I really can't with her. And then the scholarship mom in question is Elena. Now, Elena stands out from the group because it's all privileged women. Is there a little diversity? I feel like one of the women is Asian, but one of the women is Asian, so everybody else is rich. It's like all white and one Asian woman, and they're all wealthy. And Elena's not wealthy, and she comes into this like little group because they're planning an event that takes place in the show. She comes in, and her character is kind of like an exhibitionist, but also kind of like fish out of water because she's not one of the like wealthy privileged women. And she's kind of an exhibitionist to me. Like she's has a baby, and like I am like so pro like, breastfeeding in public, do what you have to do. But she takes off her whole shirt and pulls out one she takes off her whole shirt, has it like slung over the side of her arm, and then she has like just her bra on and just pulls out one boob and starts breastfeeding. And everyone is just like, are you kidding? Or are you serious? Like, and that's not the only thing she does. Then she approaches Grace later on, just fully butt naked at the gym. And I'm like, this is a plot hole, because how can someone who's broke go to the same gym as the rich lady? That doesn't make sense unless gym prices are much more reasonable. No, they're not. Gym prices are not reasonable, because the gym that Taylor Swift goes to, I'm not saying it's the same gym in the show, but like the gym that Taylor Swift would go to, I wouldn't go to. Okay, that girl would be going to Planet Fitness. She wouldn't be at the like fancy boutique gym where you come in and they have wooden, like, it's a really nice locker room. It's not. I'm just thinking about it. Wait, we have wooden locker room in my gym. Never mind. But it's much nicer than my gym. So that's my first impression of the show, is that the characters are interesting. It gets you through. It has interesting scenes. The writing is really good. The cinematography is very cinematic. I think it's interesting. I think it's worth checking out the first episode for yourself. Did it hit a lot of very familiar notes in terms of psychological thrillers? Yes. And a little side note, Nicole Kidman sings the intro to the show. Dream a little dream of me. She can carry a little tune. I forget that she can sing because she doesn't sing in a lot of her movies and stuff. But remember, she sang in Moulin Rouge. Anyway. So this is where we get into the spoilers. Spoiler. So stop watching if you don't want to see any spoiler. I do recommend you check it out. I think it's pretty good so far. Let's talk about the spoiler. So Elena, the girl who's not rich, who stands out like a sore thumb because she always wants to pull her tits out, she gets killed. She gets murdered. Now, the thing that I think is interesting is that it's kind of being, if you have seen the show, I assume if you're still watching, you've seen it. So she gets killed, and it's kind of, this is the question I wanted to ask. Is this series going to be predictable? And I think it's interesting because the Rotten Tomatoes has like 65%, which is not rotten, because I think you have to be 50 or below to be rotten. I don't know, but it's not good. And I think that is because it hits a lot of familiar notes. But I like psychological thrillers. Honestly, I feel like if they would have released it all in one day, it probably would have been more interesting. And I want to ask a question about, so is it going to be too cliche? Is it going to be too predictable? Because right now, if you've seen the first episode, the prediction is her husband is missing because he won't answer the phone. The Elena girl is dead. He leaves for an emergency surgery the same time she leaves the charity fundraiser. Seems like he did it, right? And now he's AWOL. But how is that a widespread disaster? Now, is that hinting at something bigger, or is it going to have a domino effect? What's really going on? What's really going to happen? And it seems kind of obvious, like maybe they were having an affair. Maybe he was paying for her son to go to the private school to cover up the fact that they had that affair. Think about it. Like, because the police come around, and the police are like, what do you know about how can she afford to go to send her kid to this school. And they're like, oh, she's probably a scholarship mom. Everyone is assuming it's a scholarship. And they even had a fundraiser for the scholarship. So they assume like, hey, that's our money at work. But doesn't it really seem like that? And doesn't it seem like, because she was looking at Nicole really hard. And I really am thinking, like, from some of their interactions, she was surprised to meet her and like her so much. She was surprised, like, you're the nicest one and you're the only one who's giving me respect, but you're the one whose husband I had an affair with. It seems like, doesn't that seem where it's going? I think that if the show is smart, it'll be like a red herring and there will be more details unfolding that are more interesting. They have to kind of double back. They have to kind of make this. I really think that if I just guessed the whole plot of the series from the first episode, yikes. But if they do take it in a more interesting direction, they have to show like, oh, everything you thought was a misdirect. Okay? Everything you thought was a misdirect, because it's like, it's too obvious. Like, they made the husband too much of an a-hole from the very jump. He's like so like dragging his feet. It's like, you're wealthy. You send your son to a private school. If you don't want your son to be around pretentious people, look for other schools. There are other schools to send your child to. You know what I mean? Like, there's different types of private schools. So if you send your child to the 1% private school, that's different than if you send them to like artsy fartsy private school or super liberal private school. There's different private schools. So let's stop. And that's, my next question was, what about the husband? Where did the husband go? Because both their husbands are missing at this point, right? So it's like, Elena's husband, where did Elena's husband go? And then Elena's an artist? I don't know. I don't know about any of this. And she has her own studio? I don't know. That's expensive in New York. You can't afford to have your own studio. So that is kind of a question of like, what does she do? Who is she? What is Elena's whole deal? I don't know. I'm kind of interested. And also, I think when Elena is looking at Grace at the party, is she really looking at Grace, or is she looking at Grace's husband? Because she's like, look at him over there, pretending like nothing's going on. Like, then why was Elena weeping? Was Elena weeping because she saw them together? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many layers of like, I hope that all these really predictable things that they're laying a foundation for are completely usurped as the series goes on. I hope it's completely bucking the stereotypes that I think that they're laying out. That's all. That's it. I don't have anything else to say. And the fact that they were talking about that girl's boobs, her boobs are so with really great breasts. I was like, girl, calm down. That's all. I think the show, I'm probably going to watch it, even if it does seem like it's going to be kind of cliche. I am still going to watch it. I like psychological thrillers. It's like everybody has that genre where even if this like movie or book or series is like cliche, you like the cliches and the hallmarks of the genre, so you like to watch all the way through. Like, people like Hallmark movies, right? I like thrillers. So like, maybe it'll be cliche, but maybe I'll still like it. Maybe we'll still like it. Will you still like it? Let me know down below.